While this podcast isn't rated explicit, the content may not be suitable for younger listeners. Welcome to Sex for Saints, the Christian couple's guide to great sex. I am your host, certified sex and marriage coach, Amanda Lauder. This is episode 379. I guess I'm a terrible spouse. Welcome to Sex for Saints, a podcast for Christian couples. My goal with this podcast is to help enlighten, educate, and inspire you to understand yourself, your spouse, and your sexuality better. I talk about sex in a way you probably haven't heard before. I'm bold, I'm direct, but I keep everything in line with my strong Christian values. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Okay, tell me if this has ever happened to you. You bring up something hard, something tender. Maybe it's that you feel disconnected. Maybe it's that you want more from the relationship. Or maybe it's about sex. You're feeling undesired. You're craving something different. You've just been missing that spark. You speak your truth, and then you hear it. Well, I guess I'm just a terrible spouse then. And just like that, the entire conversation screeches to a halt. What just happened? That phrase, I guess I'm a terrible spouse, shows up in marriages all the time. And it almost always shuts down the emotional connection and sexual progress. Not because one person is actually terrible, but because that phrase is a sign of emotional overload. It's kind of an escape hatch. So today we're going to talk about what's actually going on when that phrase gets used, why it shows up, what it means underneath the surface, and how it plays out not only in your everyday conversations, but in your sexual relationship too. So let's start with this. That phrase is rarely about you. It's usually about what's happening inside your spouse. So why do they say it? When someone says, I guess I'm just a terrible spouse, they're not making a thoughtful observation. They're reacting, often out of emotional pain, overwhelm, or fear. It's a defense mechanism, one that serves a very particular purpose: to get out of the conversation that feels too vulnerable, too hard, or too threatening. And often it comes from one of four places: shame, defensiveness, learned helplessness, or conflict avoidance. These show up in everyday life, but they also play out in your sex life in really specific ways. So let's walk through each of them and talk about how they show up both emotionally and sexually. So the first one, shame. I'm broken. I'm not enough. Shame is a deep, often unspoken belief that we are fundamentally bad, wrong, or inadequate. So when a partner hears even gentle feedback, like, I miss you, or I'd love more closeness, their brain translates it as an indictment. I'm not good enough. I'm failing. Now, emotionally, this looks like a spouse who melts down or spirals every time something hard is brought up. Sexually, it might look like a partner who shuts down when there's a desire for more variety or frequency. So if you say, I want to feel more connection when we have sex, they hear, you're bad at this. You're not desirable. And instead of staying in the conversation, they retreat. Well, I guess I'm just not the lover you wanted. I guess I'm just kind of broken. Underneath the reaction is often years, maybe decades, of internalized messaging from religion, from culture, from past relationships. It might be an upbringing that equated sex with shame, or one where they were always too much or not enough. And so now in marriage, when sex becomes vulnerable or imperfect, it touches those old wounds, and shame hijacks the moment. Now, the remedy for shame isn't fixing it or bypassing it. It's naming it, holding space for it, reminding your partner or yourself that being imperfect doesn't mean being unworthy, that struggle isn't the same as failure, although I don't think failure is a problem either, and that growth in sex or in marriage is supposed to be messy, okay? The second one, defensiveness, is you don't see how hard I'm trying. So defensiveness usually comes from a deep desire to be seen, to have our effort acknowledged. So when someone feels like they've been working really hard, holding a job, parenting, managing the mental load, initiating occasionally, even when it's hard, and their partner still says something's missing, it can sting. And that sting can turn into self-protection. So in conversation, this might sound like, I do everything for this family and it's still not enough. I guess I'm just a failure then. In the bedroom, defensiveness might show up when a partner initiates and gets turned down, or when they've made real effort, like setting the mood, giving a massage, or a planned date night, and it doesn't go the way they'd hoped. They might snap. You know what? I guess I'm just never going to get it right. I guess I'm just a terrible spouse. But what they're saying is, this hurts. Please notice me. Please appreciate the effort that I'm making, even if it's not perfect. Defensiveness is a way of asking for validation without directly asking. And the more it shows up, the harder it becomes for a couple to talk honestly about what they need, because every conversation becomes a courtroom instead of a safe place to land. All right, number 3 is learned helplessness. No matter what I do, it's never enough. So some spouses, especially those who have felt like they're failing sexually or emotionally for a long time, begin to internalize the belief that nothing that they will do will make a difference, that their partner will always be disappointed, that they're just not cut out for this. So when a conversation begins, even with compassion, they immediately collapse. I've tried everything. I've read books. I've been patient, but you're still not happy. I guess I'm just a terrible spouse. So in sex, this can show up when one partner feels like they've tried to increase desire or improve communication or overcome their anxiety, but the issues persist. And instead of continuing to engage, they surrender. Not in a trusting, healthy way, but in a hopeless way. You clearly want someone I can't be. So what's the point? It's not that they don't care. It's that they've convinced themselves that they're not capable of change, and that belief becomes a wall in the relationship. The way through helplessness is to make success feel possible again. Tiny wins, small changes, compassionate re-engagement. It's reminding each other that growth isn't about fixing everything. It's about staying in it, showing up one step at a time. All right, number 4. Conflict avoidance. Let's shut this down before it gets worse. This is one of the most common roots of the I guess I'm a terrible spouse line. It's a way to end the conversation before it gets too real, too emotional, too risky. So instead of saying, this conversation makes me uncomfortable and I don't know how to handle it, they say, well, I guess I'm a failure, hoping that you'll back off, soothe them, or change the subject. And it often works. The partner who brought up the issues feels guilty. They start caretaking. They drop their concern just to keep the peace. So in sex, this can be devastating. It creates a dynamic where one partner feels they can never bring up their desires, their pain, or their longing for more, because every time they do, their spouse retreats or reacts. So over time, this leads to avoidance, emotional, physical, sexual. Conversations stop, initiation stops, growth stops, and the relationship begins to feel stuck, not because the love is gone, but because the risk feels too great. But growth requires discomfort. Sexual development requires discomfort. So we have to learn how to stay in those conversations, even when it's hard. If you've been thinking about coaching with me, this is your sign. Whether it's inside my women's membership, through one-on-one coaching for both men or women, or working together as a couple, I've got support that's tailored to you. Consultations for fall coaching are now opening up, but my schedule is already filling up fast. So if this has been on your heart, don't wait. Get signed up now before spots are gone. You can find all the details at amandalauder.com. All right. So when your spouse says, well, I guess I'm just a terrible spouse, what do? First, don't take the bait. This is not your cue to backpedal or silence your needs. Their reaction is about them. You can stay calm and grounded in your truth. Second, Get curious about what's underneath. Try something like, I don't think you're terrible. I think this is just hard to talk about, and I want to be able to talk about it without either one of us shutting down. And third, reassure without rescuing. You can say, I love you. I care about us. And I think we're both learning how to have better conversations about this. You don't have to fix their emotional spiral, but you can offer presence and clarity. Now, what if you're the one who says it? If you recognize that you are the one who often says, well, I guess I'm just a terrible spouse then. First of all, take a breath. You're not alone. This pattern is incredibly common, which is why I'm doing a whole podcast about it. And it doesn't mean you're broken, immature, or incapable of love. It just means that there's something in you that hasn't yet learned how to stay present when a conversation gets vulnerable. So let's unpack what might be happening underneath and what you can do differently next time. So if it's shame, maybe your first instinct in hard conversations is to feel like you're not enough. Maybe any critique feels like confirmation of your deepest fear that you're a failure or that your spouse would be better off with someone else. When that shame spiral begins, you might say something like, I guess I'm just a terrible spouse, to punish yourself before your spouse can. It's like beating them to the punch so you can protect yourself from further pain. But here's what's more courageous and more connecting. Instead say, that's really hard to hear. I notice myself wanting to shut down and go into shame, but I'm going to stay with you because this matters. That's vulnerability. That's repair in real time. That's growth. All right, if it's defensiveness, okay, maybe you hear your spouse's concerns and immediately feel unseen. Don't they know how hard I'm trying? Why don't they appreciate what I do? Instead of saying that directly, you go to sarcasm or shut down. Well, I guess I'm just not doing anything right then. Defensiveness often masks longing for recognition, for appreciation, or even affirmation. So next time, try something like, I want to hear you, but part of me feels like my effort isn't being seen. Can we talk about both? You can validate your experience without invalidating your spouse's. That's powerful stuff. All right, what if it's learned helplessness? You may feel like you've tried before and failed, that nothing you do ever satisfies your spouse, that conversations about the relationship or sex always end up in disappointment. So you surrender. I guess I'm just a terrible spouse because it feels easier to collapse than to try again. But helplessness isn't truth. It's a learned response to repeated frustration. And the antidote is small, consistent re-engagement. So instead of collapsing, say, I'm feeling discouraged because I've tried and I'm not sure what to do, but I want to keep trying with your help. That's a posture of collaboration, not defeat, and it reopens the door to connection. Now, if it's conflict avoidance, maybe it's you don't like these conversations. Maybe you feel trapped, exposed, or like something really big and heavy is about to drop. So you say, I guess I'm a terrible spouse, as a kind of exit strategy. The conversation stops. Your partner rushes to comfort you. Crisis averted for now. But avoidance only delays growth and slowly erodes trust. The way forward is learning to stay in the room, to say, I notice I want to shut down and make this go away, but I'm going to keep listening. Even naming the impulse to avoid can be grounding and disarming. You don't have to love conflict to learn how to stay present with it. These small shifts don't require you to be perfect. They just require you to stay in it. And that's where the magic happens. So if you've already said it, then you need to repair. Okay. So when you say, I guess I'm just a terrible spouse, the conversation shuts down, but you can still repair. Now, maybe it's later that afternoon or that evening or even the next day, you can come back and say, hey, I've been thinking about what I said earlier. When I said I was a terrible spouse, I wasn't really listening to you. I was overwhelmed and I didn't know how to handle what I was feeling. I want to do better next time. I want to hear what you were trying to tell me. That kind of repair is powerful not just because it clears the air, but because it builds trust. It tells your spouse, you matter enough to me that I'm willing to own my part. And it tells yourself, I'm capable of growth. So, what if you realize you actually aren't doing enough? Because sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes that phrase, I guess I'm just a terrible spouse, comes not from shame or defensiveness, but from recognition. From that moment when you finally see it clearly, I haven't been showing up in the way that I promised I would. Maybe you've been withdrawing emotionally. Maybe you've been putting your energy elsewhere in the relationship. Maybe you've been avoiding sex because it's uncomfortable. And now it's been months or years since initiating anything. And maybe your spouse has been quietly carrying the weight of the disconnection, hoping you'd notice, hoping you'd care. So when the conversation finally happens, the I'm a terrible spouse line spills out, not as a manipulation, but as a confession, as a moment of gut level truth. And that moment matters because that's where the real work begins. So here's the thing. Recognizing you're falling short doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. It means you're waking up to something that needs attention. The goal isn't to wallow in guilt or spiral into despair. The goal is to let that recognition soften your heart instead of harden it. So if you realize you haven't been showing up sexually, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is, own it. Not in shame, not with self-pity, but with humility. Say, you're right. I haven't been present. And I want to understand how that's affected you. I want to do better, not to just check a box, but because you matter to me. This relationship matters to me. And then start taking small, faithful steps that align with the kind of spouse you want to be. You don't have to fix everything overnight, but you do have to re-engage. Show up when it's awkward. Ask questions when it's easier to stay silent. Touch when you feel unsure. Try again after you miss the mark. Because love isn't proven by getting it right the first time. It's proven in the trying, in the repairing, in the returning. So if you're waking up to the reality that you've drifted, good. Let's let that awakening move you toward action, because there's nothing more healing for a relationship than when a spouse who's pulled away says, I see it now. I care, and I'm back. So that phrase, I guess I'm just a terrible spouse, might feel like truth in the moment, but it's not truth. It's a shield. And behind every shield is a longing to be seen, to be loved, to feel safe. So let's stop treating these moments like shutdowns and start treating them like signals, opportunities to understand each other better, to stay present, to speak what's true, even when it's messy. Because in the end, real love doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from walking through it together. All right, my friends, that's all I've got for you today. Remember, love is a journey, not a destination. Stay committed, stay passionate, and stay connected. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Like what you're hearing on this podcast? Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Don't forget to leave me a review and share it with your friends.